Okay, there were two very important battles at this time in history in the Civil War called the battles of Fredericksburg and the Battle of Chancellorsville. Can we remember who the overall commander of Union forces are right now? Went back and forth. What? No, Union. The Confederate will never change. McClellan, very good. Well, Lincoln becomes disappointed with the leadership of General McClellan again. And so he replaces him as overall commander of Union forces with General Ambrose Burnside. That's right. Who wrote the paper on that? Somebody? So, why'd you say that? Who said that, Brady?
I just said it because it...
Yeah, you know, actually he wore hair on the side of his face, and he originated the term sideburns from Burnside.
We call it like month.
So what was his for?
Yeah.
His name was Ambrose Burnside. It's on your sheet. But he did originate what we know today as sideburns, because he wore lamb chops, like you said, down the side of his face. So again, disappointed with the leadership of General McClellan, President Lincoln replaces him as overall commander of Union forces, this time with General Ambrose Burnside. And the Union plan under Burnside was again to attack the Confederates near Richmond. We keep trying to take Richmond. That's our goal in the Eastern Theater. Take Richmond, take Richmond, take Richmond. And the Union has been very unsuccessful in that. And the only battle they have won is when they were basically defending their homeland in Maryland at Antietam. So the goal still is we're going to pound into Virginia and take Richmond. Now, in order to get to Richmond, they had to win a victory at Fredericksburg first. It was on the way. So the Union plan is to secure a victory at Fredericksburg, then advance directly to the Confederate capital of Richmond, and end the war once and for all. That's the plan. Advance to Fredericksburg, win a victory there. Advance to Richmond, win a victory there, and end the Civil War once and for all. So, on December 13th of 1862, on December 13th of 1862, General Burnside leads Union troops on a frontal attack against the Confederacy at Fredericksburg. On December 13th, 1862, General Burnside leads Union troops on a frontal attack against the Confederacy at Fredericksburg. Now, what was kind of the rule of the Union troops? How did they march into battle? Say it. In strict formation. They did that in strict formation. Well, the Confederate soldiers were behind rocks and trees and other unseen areas. And as those Union soldiers walked in strict formation, marched in strict formation towards Fredericksburg, what did those rebel soldiers do? Cut them down. Just cut them down. So the Union soldiers marched in strict formation toward the Confederate soldiers and were cut down by rebels who were firing behind rocks, trees, and other, I guess, unseen areas. In that very short engagement at Fredericksburg, the Union lost over 12,000 soldiers, either killed or wounded. 12,000 on the Union side alone. A crushing defeat, very unnecessary, old-fashioned war tactics. And as a result, was a crushing defeat at Fredericksburg for the Union. They lost over 12,000 soldiers, killed or wounded. Well, what happens after the Battle of Fredericksburg? Think of the time period. It was cold, and what did they generally, we talked about this before, what did they do? What's that? They quit fighting for the winter. So after the Battle of Fredericksburg, both the North and the South are going to take positions close to their capitals, the Union at D.C., and the Confederates at Richmond, and they're simply going to dig in for the winter. There will be no fighting. So the Battle of Fredericksburg is the last battle fought during the year of 1862. They will wait until the spring of 1863 to recommence fighting. And that will be where? At Chancellorsville. Very good. So, the Battle of Fredericksburg turns out to be a disastrous defeat for the Union. They lose 12,000 troops in a very short period of time. Winter's going to set in. Both sides go back to their respective capitals and dig in for the winter.
So I'm assuming unless they win at Chancellorsville, Lincoln's going to get louder and places like Poland. Right?
Well, isn't that something? Well, that's right, because when the spring arrives, Lincoln changes overall commanders again. This time he changes from Ambrose Burnside to General Joe Hooker. General Joe Hooker. So how many times has Lincoln changed? My goodness, many, many times. And how many times the Confederates changed?
It was Joe
0.
Hooker, right?
Joe Hooker, yep. Now, General Hooker is going to lead about 130,000 troops into battle against the Confederacy at Chancellorsville. This is in the spring of 1863. And Joe Hooker has been named overall commander of Union forces, and his plan is to lead approximately 130,000 troops into battle against the Confederacy. Now, the Confederates are going to be badly outnumbered here. Badly outnumbered. So, if you kind of look, we won't use 130,000 X's. But here comes the Union, right? Here comes the Union. Here is the Confederacy defending Chancellorsville. Okay? So, are you going to fight them head on? Or are you going to maybe divide your forces and try to attack them from a different direction, catch them off guard? This isn't a very good description, but Lee divides. He sends half of his troops under the direction of, remember, General Stonewall Jackson, Thomas Stonewall Jackson? And he orders Jackson to split off from the regular troops and attack Hooker's troops from a different direction, take them by surprise. So General Hooker and the Army were expecting all of Lee's rebel troops in one area. Lee split his troops and ordered General Stonewall Jackson to attack the Union general from a different direction. And it caught Hooker by surprise. So as Jackson has attacked from a different direction and got the attention and kind of pulled Union forces that way, Lee attacks a frontal attack against Hooker's main army. So when Stonewall Jackson attacks from a different direction, it gets their attention and they start pulling troops out to fight against Jackson. And when he does that, Lee assembles his men and attacks the Union forces on a frontal attack. And again, the Confederates win an upset victory over the Union at Chancellorsville. But this victory will come at a very, very, very high price. So again, in the spring of 1863, Lincoln changes overall commanders. He changes to General Joe Hooker. General Hooker will lead approximately 130,000 troops into battle against the Confederacy at Chancellorsville, Virginia. Knowing he is badly outnumbered, Confederate General Lee boldly divides his smaller army into two separate units. Hooker is expecting all of General Lee's rebel troops in the same area. Lee orders General Stonewall Jackson to attack the Union general from a different direction. He does attack Union troops, and he surprises General Hooker. It splits up the Union army. General Lee then assembles the rest of his men and attacks Union forces on a frontal attack, and the Confederates win an upset victory at Chancellorsville. But it comes at an incredibly high price. During the Battle of Chancellorsville, General Stonewall Jackson was accidentally shot by his own men, who mistook him for the enemy in the heat of battle. He was shot. He was shot in the arm. He was shot in the arm. Kind of like what happened to him is what happened to old Joshua Jones in our movie. What happened to Joshua Jones? Shot in the leg. What they do? But they finally did what? They amputated his leg. What happened? Infection set in, he died. That's exactly what happened to General Jackson. He was shot in the arm. His arm was eventually amputated. They were expecting him to live without much difficulty. He caught a very high fever from an undetected internal injury that he had received, not having to do with his arm, and he died shortly after the Battle of Chancellorsville. So that's the high price the Confederates paid. Jackson was shot in the arm. His arm was amputated. He was expected to live, but they went undetected, and an internal injury that he had received, and they're not sure when that was, not necessarily during the Battle of Chancellorsville. And he got a very, very high fever. Medical things were not the same at that time, and he died shortly after the Battle of Chancellorsville. Now I want you to write down this quote, because after Jackson's death, this is how Robert E. Lee reacted to that news. So after Jackson's death, this is how Robert E. Lee reacted to that death. He said, quote, "I have lost my right arm and know not how to replace it." I have lost my right arm, meaning Jackson, and know not how to replace it. I have lost my right arm and know not how to replace it.
Is this one just going down or no? Because I know
Well,
that Lee is really good.
Yeah, it's going to hurt him. This losing Jackson's going to hurt him. And he was so upset with Jackson's death that he said, quote, "I have lost my right arm and know not how to replace it." Now, despite the loss of General Jackson, this victory at Fredericksburg, this victory at Chancellorsville, do what for the Confederates? Give them what?
Confidence.
Great confidence. So again, the South will take the Civil War to northern soil. They will go on the offensive. Because of their victories at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, their confidence is high. And because of their great confidence, they are going to take, again, the Civil War to northern soil, which takes us to our next subtopic, which is the Battle of Gettysburg. Battle of Gettysburg. What state is Gettysburg in? Anybody know? Pennsylvania. Very good. So they're going into Pennsylvania. They're going to not attack a border state this time. They are going to attack a Union state in Pennsylvania at Gettysburg. Now, this is kind of interesting now, because Lincoln doesn't purposely change overall commanders again. Joe Hooker, after the loss at Chancellorsville, resigns. And sometimes, like coaching these days, nobody wants the job. Because how's it gone for him so far? Be almost like your head basketball coach, boys basketball coach, resigns because he's been losing. He's 1-37 the last 2 years, and they're looking for a new coach, and you don't have very good talent coming back, and your problem is nobody wants the job because they don't want to take it and lose all the time. So Lincoln can't find anybody that wants the job, which should be kind of a big deal, a promotion. Well, on June 27th of 1863, it's kind of an interesting story. On June 27th of 1863, President Lincoln sent a personal message to the camp of Union General George Meade. On June 27th of 1863, Lincoln sends a personal message or letter to the camp of Union General George Meade. Well, when this message is given to Meade from Lincoln, what does he think is happening? fired. He thinks he's getting fired. He thinks he's going to be relieved of his command. He thinks, well, the only reason Lincoln would send me a letter would be bad news. And he thought that he was going to be relieved of his command. What did the letter say in it?
You've been promoted.
Guess what? You've been promoted to overall commander of Union forces. A job that Meade really didn't want, but it was assigned to him. It wasn't something he really cherished. Well, while all this uncertainty is happening around who's going to lead Union forces, what is General Robert E. Lee doing? Well, not yet, but he's marching 75,000 men towards Pennsylvania with the thought of bringing the war to northern soil. So while the North is a little bit in disarray, trying to find an overall commander, Robert E. Lee is marching 75,000 strong Confederate troops into Pennsylvania. Now, these 75,000 rebel soldiers are still the largest military invasion against the United States of America on their own soil in American history. No one, before or since, has invaded the United States with that many troops.
That's a lot of troops.
What was the last invasion we had on American soil? What? Last one since this. On World War II, who invaded our soil? Japan at Pearl Harbor. How about the next one? What's the next invasion we've had on American soil? 9/11. That's exactly right, Brady. So here comes General Robert E. Lee with 75,000 Confederate troops heading for Pennsylvania. The only other two times in American history that we've ever been invaded is when the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor and the assaults on 9/11. But no one has brought 75,000 men to invade. Okay, that's still the largest invading force in American history. Now, here's Lee's three-point strategy in this point in the war. And this will be on your assignment, I'll assure you. So here are the three things Lee was trying to accomplish as he brought the war to northern soil. So Lee's strategy at this point in the Civil War was threefold. These are the three things he wanted to do. First of all, he wanted to win a decisive battle on northern soil. He wanted to win a decisive battle on northern soil. The second thing he wanted to do, and two will result because of one, if he wins this decisive battle on northern soil, he will cut off the American capital of Washington, D.C. from the rest of the North. He's using the Union strategy of capturing Richmond against the Union by making a move on what? Washington, D.C. So the first thing he wants to do is he wants to win a decisive battle on northern soil. The second thing he wants to do is cut off America's capital from the rest of the North. Now he believes in his heart, number three, that if he wins the decisive battle in the North, and he cuts off America's capital from the rest of the North, that the Union will lose their will to fight and allow the Confederacy to have their own independent country. That's what he's thinking. We're going to march to the Union soil. We're going to win a decisive victory there. We are going to cut off the Union capital from the rest of the North. And these Union soldiers will lose their will to fight. President Lincoln will say, up, this isn't going to work, I've had enough. And Lincoln and the United States government are going to allow the Confederacy to have their own independent country. That's what Lee believes will happen if he can win in Pennsylvania. That's what he believes will happen. Well, on June 30th of 1863, June 30th of 1863, Robert E. Lee's Confederate troops engage General Meade's Union troops at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. On June 30th, 1863, General Robert E. Lee's troops engaged General Meade's troops at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This Battle of Gettysburg lasted 2 days. And I'm not going to give you a ton of detail. I'm going to give you the overall picture, and then we're going to watch a video on the Battle of Gettysburg, and again, where you'll see it in detail and pick out some specific names of people. Okay? So, on June 30th, 1863, General Robert E. Lee's troops engaged General Meade's troops at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And these armies, 2 armies, fight for 2 days as they're maneuvering for position. There's a lot of high hills around Gettysburg, and for 2 days both sides are trying to gain the high ground, because gaining the high ground puts you in an advantage. So for 2 days the main armies fought desperately as they maneuvered position for the surrounding hills of Gettysburg. Well, on July 3rd of 1863, General Lee staked the fate of the Confederate Army on one battle, one charge. Okay? He's put all of his eggs in one basket, and he does that on July 3rd, 1863. He's going to put the state of the Confederacy in one shot for victory. He gathers up 15,000 of his finest